Well, welcome, folks. This is a meeting of the State House Advisory Committee. We're continuing our work in terms of trying to finish up our work and making a recommendation to both Joint Management Committee as well as Joint Rules Committee about how we proceed with future expansion of the state. Today, we have reached consensus, I believe, in terms of going up with a floor above the cafeteria. And our proposal for that would be that the cafeteria, the serving area, and the kitchen be moved up to that floor. And that current space now would be converted to 5 committee rooms. I forgot, 5, 6 committee rooms that would be converted into. We have also made a recommendation that 1.5 million we would request from our colleagues, the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, for a jumpstart on getting an RFP out to start doing some preliminary program and schematic designs so that we have a better idea come May what the cost of that particular project would entail. The question now is, does that RFP that goes out also encompass expansions on either side of the State House? Or does it only encompass if we do an expansion on either side of the State House, that you look at what infrastructure needs would need to be addressed? So I'm putting that out on the table because that's the real issue that's before us, that we keep spinning and spinning and spinning. Now, just to remind members, we're not the final decision-making entity. We're only making a recommendation to Joint Management and Joint Rules. And we're only making a recommendation as well about our money, the 1.5 million, to both Joint Rules and Joint Management. And our colleagues on Appropriations Committee in the House, I'm not sure about the Senate, but in the House are aware of this. So I'm opening it up for discussion. Butch?
Thanks. So at our last meeting, we were spinning in a circle, talking with Tricia Harper regarding the RFP for our current RFP that you just described. If I remember right, we were really delving into the weeds about, I mean, I felt like we were picking out paper towel holders during the discussion, which I don't think is really what Tricia's looking for. And I think the question that I know that I asked Tricia was, what do you think we should have in the RFP? Can you give us a few things? And I saw you write something down. So give us a few things that would be make this RFP be able to make this RFP go forward with some basic requests before we got into the weeds and let the committees of jurisdiction do that work. And it's so like I think to Senator Clarkson's report thing, I personally hadn't thought much about the bigger overarching question of more space later on, beyond. We need to build the infrastructure to support that should the committee recommend that at some point in time. But my focus has been on, do we go up, get some larger committee rooms, get a little bigger space, and then sit and wait to see what happens with everything else. So that's where I left off anyway. And I don't think that we came to consensus on that before we left. So maybe would it be easier if we tried to come to consensus on the RFP before we started looking at future phase 2, 3, or whatever we want to call it.
Tricia, why don't you come on up? Because YouTube doesn't pick you up, or the mics if you're out in the audience.
Good morning, I'm Tricia Harper, architect with architectural restoration consulting. And I am, in regards to what Representative Shaw was saying, so if we proceed, and going back to that kind of schedule that I showed you earlier, if we proceed with developing an RFP now to send out to architects based on the funding, potentially be available in early March, if the general.
With this budget adjustment,
Budget
general,
General fund, okay, thank you. And that would be, at that point, you already have been living with a hybrid system for three months. Or 2 months, right, January, February, and then in March. So that's when the architect, the RFP would be able to come in. And at that point, they would be able, you'll have a better sense of how you want to operate, I think. I think it's going to be a telltale year for that, and a way to develop and provide that information to that architect for that programming phase and schematic design phase of prior to leaving you a journey. That's my hope. By getting going early, if we get an RFP out on the street in February, with the hope that if you get positive feedback that you can get that 1.5 million, we can put it out on the street once you know that. And therefore we could, be able to, that architect would be able to come in while you are still in session and discuss with you the development of a full set of design, schematic design and possibly design development for at least phase 1. And phase 2 would be better. I think you'll have more of an idea what you want in phase 2 at that point, and or be able to at least experience the new type of legislature that the hybrid situation, and understanding how, if 2 and 4 acres is going to work for you. The building will be pretty close to, the first and second floor will be done, and see how that all goes.
so Steve, then Allison.
Alton, I may have a question. So in hearing that, my question is, within that RFP, we're asking them for, I'm gonna use all the wrong words, but design services for the overbuild with a very specific program that we've already come up with for that space. But the RFP also includes that they'll be providing design services or sketch services or advisory services in developing phase 2 and 3, all as part of the same request. And is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I mean, that sounds very interesting to me.
Yes, yeah, and that would be, because you know that you want a bigger cafeteria, and you know that you want these committee rooms, you need larger size committee rooms, especially in the smaller communities. So yeah, at that point, you'll be able to, we don't have to I can give them what the program for the building in general is saying, but on these other spaces, the ledge council, call that one of the other spaces, can be developed at that time and further understood which direction that you want to go on it, so that you don't have to, say, oh, this is set in stone right now. That's the program we want to do on this new phase, the second phase, but you know what you want to do on the first phase. I think you concluded that. So I think it's doable. The question is, you got to proceed with the RFP. Like, I'd have to draft up the RFP for Janet so that she can, or for you, and so that it can go out for the legislature.
So, but who would, okay, I'm interrupting here a minute.
Oh, it's okay.
At the front end here, we're talking going out this RFP to get the program needs schematic design. And that would be under the direction of our sergeant at arms or BGS. Would the money be appropriated to the sergeant at arms to go out and do this? Or is the money going to be appropriated to BGS to go out and do this? Because that's a big issue, because we don't have the capacity in the sergeant at arms to oversee construction documents. Correct? So the question then becomes, the money is not going to just be appropriated up in La La Land. It's either going to be appropriated to the sergeant at arms, or it's going to be appropriated to BGS. And if it's appropriated to BGS, BGS is in the driver's. Put that out on the table. Allison?
I'm exchanging
think you're
terrified
right.
glances there. So I am still unclear about what we want to include. Independent of whether it goes to BGS or the sergeant at arms. I want to clarify that we are looking holistically at an expansion, that we are asking to do the work in this RFP of figuring out how we're using 2 and 4. Now that, I mean, the change really for going forward that's been different from the past is that we have 2 and 4 Aiken. So for me, I want to make sure that we, in this RFP, we are doing the work of figuring out what the highest and best use is of 2 and 4 in the capital complex plan. And that means working with Ledge Council to see, I mean, to see if they want to be incorporated in phase 2, you know, in the expansion of the state hub. That to me is the full conversation we have to have in order to have a full plan for phase 2. I don't know if we need, I wouldn't bother with a phase 3 because the political will to appropriate that money is going to dissipate.
Yeah.
So, and once we're satisfied, as we saw, because we only ended up building phase 1. I mean, we got stuck with phase 1 when we really had wanted to do much more. And so having lived through this once burned, twice shy, I don't want us to not be committed to doing a full renovation. Let's say Ledge Council said, oh my God, it would be great to have our own building, just like JFO. But we want to actually totally gut and redo it so that it works for us and not just do paint job and some electrical work. But really gut it, do a fabulous design and make it work for an expanded staff, whatever. To me, that's the full conversation that you need to have before we can then. Am I?
No, I hear and I agree, and that's why I think this will work. That you can have that conversation, the conversation about what goes into phase 2, or maybe you incorporate phase 1 and 2 into, a whole plan that actually gets constructed
Right,
in.
which would be great.
Right, so so I think that whole potential in writing that it's all open, and you can decide in March which way, how, what you want to see in the next phase and at that point, or.
But if we only ask for 1.5, is that adequate to do the work we're talking about?
For schematic programming and schematic design. Yeah, I would like to say yes, and that would be 2 years ago, it would have been yes. But after what I saw in pricing recently, I'm a little nervous.
So should we be looking more like asking for 2 million for this?
Maybe, yeah, and that will get, I'm sure that will get us through programming and schematic design. I'm just thinking this addition has just doubled. So that means that 10%, remember I gave you that list of how much everything is, so 10% of that is, I think this, it's
20 million just to put a floor above the cafeteria.
maybe, but like
Keep
one,
that in mind.
yeah,
That doesn't include 2 acres.
and it might be like 30, because I tell you, the contracting right now is just, the cost of construction's gone.
But I want
Stay there.
to put this on the table so members here are very clear. There is no shovel that is going to be in the ground next summer,
Yes,
No.
construction. There's no way. Because schematic design is not your construction documents to go out to bid with a contractor to put a shovel in the ground. That's another year plus. And then you gotta find the money to do it. Yeah,
Allison, I don't disagree with the desire to have an overall complete picture and consensus on what that's going to be. But I'm hearing very clearly that it is too early to make that decision. As I understand it, with the hybrid model we're about to dive into, many people are totally unaware right now of what Vision Plan 2 is supposed to be looking like. Don't know what Ledge Council is going to want. We can't anticipate that. We don't know what our own Zoom capacity or willingness to accept that is going to be. So the only thing I can conclude is, in order to make some movement somewhere, if we're reaching consensus on making a recommendation about building on top of the cafeteria, part of that process is to decide what infrastructure needs are going to accompany that, in anticipation that those needs may have to change at some point down the road. If that so far, Trish, is something you and I can at least agree on, what then would you need to have in an RFP to get us to that point?
So I just want to clarify that you're saying that so the RFP would outline what we had for programs in the past, and say this is what the program is, you know, for the building when it was pre-COVID. But now that we're in a hybrid situation, that it's changed and we need to develop. No?
no,
Am I missing it?
no,
Okay,
no,
sorry.
no. I know what you're saying.
Okay,
You're gonna go upstairs above the cafeteria, we're gonna do that. There's your program need and your schematic design. It's not talking about a hybrid model, it's, you know, what Joe is saying. We have reached consensus on building up,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
The next part of that is trying to figure out what infrastructure you put in that for future possible expansion, which we don't know how that's gonna look like because we haven't experienced the hybrid model yet. We will know more come March, this coming session, what that hybrid model looks like. Isn't that what you were referring to?
I thought that's what I said, but that's
Yeah.
okay. But there's one other component to that, though, and that is the present House committee rooms have to have an upgrade to the HVAC system. That's a floor. After that, what is accommodated in a new HVAC system is going to be wrapped around phase 2 and possibly phase 3, but we haven't reached that point yet. I don't see there's any drawback, I guess, in overbuilding to some extent a potential HVAC system that may accommodate future needs. But I'm trying to figure out, how do we get you to give us a recommendation for what needs to be in the RFP immediately? And then we can turn that around and pitch it to our comrades on the other committees that are actually going to make the decision.
I don't know where you're pointing.
No, I've got Butch before you for a question.
I'm done.
You're done. Butch and then Janet.
I think Joe hit upon it, but I just like to say that we're going to give a recommendation up the chain. I think the committee would need, if we're going to do that, the committee would need to come to some consensus that we want to investigate investigate even renovating 2 and 4. We're making that assumption that everybody's on board with that, and that's fine if that assumption is true. But I just have a little problem talking about 2 and 4 within this current concept of just the upbuild that we're talking about. Knowing that we do have access to that building, but, and then I'm thinking back to some of our first meetings when Ledge Council was vehemently opposed to moving over there for this next session. So before we jump off the bridge, we should come to consensus as a committee that we want to the proposal to look at renovate 2 and 4 or 2, 4, 4 or for legislative use. So that the committee that we're recommending to has a clear vision of what we're talking about.
The issue right now with 2 and there is work occurring there to upgrade the electrical. We do not have jurisdiction over the operations of Ledge Council. That is in the management committee. It really oversees the staff issues. So that's where we're at. Janet?
I think I know what people are talking about when they talk about phase 1. Pretty sure that not only is there a consensus to support it, but there's a consensus about what it is. When people talk about phase 2 and phase 3, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, I don't know if we're even clear on phase 1.
Could I finish my thought? Given that, and the fact that maybe there's not a consensus on phase 1, but I think when people say phase 1, most of us have some notion of what it is, and that's probably roughly the same around the table. With phase 2 and phase 3, if you all got it, great. I don't. I don't know what it is people are talking about. So my concern about the path that we're on is that we will be so ambitious that we will get nothing. And I think it's really important that we build up over the cafeteria and that we add some additional committee space. I think it's critical, and I don't want to be so ambitious and frankly unclear that we end up stumbling and staying with what we have currently. So I'm good on phase 1. When you get to phase 2 and phase 3, I'm not there.
So let me clarify that we're on the same page for phase 1. Because I'm not clear at this point because Allison mentioned 2 and 4, which I don't believe was in our conversation last time. I believe it was built up. Build up, do the switch of the floors. Possibly look at the incorporating the infrastructure, which would be to accommodate the mechanical systems for future addition on the sides. Not knowing anything of what's going to happen, but phase 1 is the time to look at if there's future expansion down the road, what is that mechanical infrastructure that's going to be needed for that? What is also included in phase 1 that I don't want to forget in the RFP is looking at 4 current House committee rooms that walls will have to be torn down and a new wall put up in the center of each of those committee rooms, so that you've expanded the adjoining committee rooms. That would also be part of phase 1. Is that where we are as a committee on phase 1? Can I at least see a show of hands that there's an agreement that that's where we are?
So can I be clear, when you're defining phase 1 to include the mechanical infrastructure work, I'm good with that.
Is that what we voted on the motion at the last meeting? Basically the same motion.
I do
So
believe
So
so.
we're describing phase 1 as the motion we've already
Yep.
voted. Okay,
So,
That was 10-1-1. And the motion was to really, well, it was more to ask the
didn't include
money,
the mechanical.
the money for the appropriations. John, it was the money for the appropriations I recommend for that, to get us through schematic design. It was the
but the
money.
basic concept is what you just described. is
Right,
what-
but we're a little bit more specific on this in terms of making sure the walls for the current committee rooms and the infrastructure for that. Eric and then Allison.
Eric Kilcorn, BGS. I was just thinking about putting the interior renovations to the existing building in the same phase as the building up. I don't know how long the conversation's gonna be or how it's gonna work when you're expanding the building or growing the building. But it seemed to me that there's definitely agreement amongst this group that the committee room sizes have to be adjusted in probably the nearer term than doing a major mechanical renovation and prepping that building. So I don't
You're not gonna
know.
Increase committee rooms unless you have an addition.
So you'll have that on hold until the addition is built.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure you didn't want to do like a 1A, 1B or somehow decouple them so that you could keep things moving.
if you don't have an expansion and you expand the current committee rooms, you've taken over 10, 11, the lounge for 5 or 6 years. And I don't think that's really
Might have to do that either way.
be willing to do.
Alice.
If I just can address Eric's point, is that I did talk to Tay Duckworth at BGS Mechanical, who's handling that project for the HVAC renovations, and because they're VAV boxes and everything's size, the square footage stays the same there. There's not gonna be an issue there as far as, yes, we might have to change out to bigger VAV boxes, variable air volume, where each office area has its own control of heat and air entering it. It's a bit different than what you have on the floor now, but it's similar because those are controlled and they go up in the ceiling. So he didn't see it as an issue. So the whole, and I said about the expansion, he goes, no, I mean, in working that into their design now, that he didn't see that as an issue. So I just wanted to say that.
Allison and then John.
So actually, Eric. So as you envision it, Alice, phase one, the RFP would not include looking at the highest and best use of 2 and 4. Because I didn't hear looking at the highest and best use for 2 and 4 in there.
I don't think we talked about that as a committee. We
What?
haven't talked about the highest and best use of 2 and 4. It's been kind of up there in the.
Well, it's been there,
But we
and it's
haven't, as a
totally.
committee, said, okay, we're also gonna grapple.
Well, when are we gonna look at it, is my question, is we have these buildings. When are we gonna be prompted to look at the highest and best use of 2 and 4, and how are they gonna be incorporated into whether we do a full renovation of the State House, i.e. the full plan, and not just build up and then call it a day? I mean, we have to understand how we're using 2 and 4 for us to figure out what the full expansion would look like, in my humble
We
opinion.
need to figure out how we're gonna use 2 and 4. We are not in the driver's seat in figuring out how we're gonna use 2 and 4.
Why not?
That's in the management committee, and that's in discussions with leadership and ledge council. We're not in the driver's seat on that.
No, but we're in a position to make a recommendation that we actually allow that conversation of highest and best use.
I think they're having that conversation at this point, and I think what they've agreed on is that the electrical wiring will be updated at 2 Aiken. We found the money for that. That's been approved. And then there's further conversations that's occurring with the Ledge Council and whether or not they move down there. You can't build a building until you know what's going to go in there.
Correct. That's my whole point. I mean, and we can't look at an expansion of the State House fully at a full plan until we know how 2 and 4 are going to be incorporated in the use of the legislative life.
Correct. But
So-
we're not in the driver's seat in terms of knowing the use of 2 and 4.
Okay, second, now I'm completely confused.
Legislative Management Committee, though, Allison, if I can jump in, I think that committee would appreciate a recommendation from this committee.
Yeah,
On the use of 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe that's something I don't know. I do, I mean, if I can jump in, this advisory committee is focused on this building. So it does, I think it is. You're disagreeing, Allison?
well, yes and no, Janet, because if Ledge Council, if our legislative staff, we had been addressing 2 and 4. I mean, we talked about it. We spent quite a number of hours discussing how to use it and how Ledge Council might use it. So I had assumed that this committee, because it's part of where our staff might go and are going, it was part of our discussion.
I felt that it was part of the discussion because we were additionally asked about this coming session. And, you know, we had, this committee had that additional responsibility to try to come up with a recommendation about how we come back in January. So I've assumed that broader discussion was in that more narrow
Oh,
context.
so I assumed it was part of the discussion of the expansion of the State House because it was I mean, it could be an immediate fix for short term, but long term, if Ledge Council was really going to embrace that and have it totally redone, and that would be their home, that's part of the expansion. So anyway, I guess I misunderstood, but I'd love to just finish with my thought about what Eric just proposed. If we address the House committee rooms, if the HVAC system is fixed by next summer, and I don't know if it would be, but it would be great to have those rooms renovated sooner than the buildup, because then we could reclaim at least 1 or 2 of our communally used rooms, because that would put people back up into committee rooms, which would be great. I mean, that would liberate rooms that are constraining our activity.
That HVAC, I don't think.
That's not gonna be done by next summer.
That's schedule. I don't know.
That's a
the
2-year.
schedule, right?
That's at least,
Kidding, it's not going to be fixed by next summer?
no. No, if we don't have the money for it, it's gonna be appropriated next session. What we're doing right now is your design documents, schematic design documents to figure out some options of what you're gonna need. And then this next legislative session, we've already put 2.5 million aside for the construction of it, but we don't know if that's the adequate amount or not. We're waiting for those design documents to come back to us in January so that we know more what the dollar amount is. And then you go into your construction design. If you have enough money there, you can go out to bid probably at the end of this 22, but you wouldn't put a shovel in the ground till the spring or summer of 23.
So to clarify, the schematic design plans are you're supposed to see those here soon, I think, right?
We're hoping this legislative session. Comes Joe. Thank you, Eric.
That wasn't the only thing I got done out there.
I'm not gonna ask.
Clarify the schedule.
Yeah, let him get settled. Let's go to John Bartholomew and then we'll circle back.
Well, a couple of thoughts, but one first question. If the phase 1 we're talking about includes creating an HVAC system that can be expanded to meet future expansion needs, does it matter which direction the expansion goes for placement of the HVAC? Because suppose we go that way as opposed to that way, if we put the HVAC there, can it deal with it if the new addition is that way?
I don't see that the HVAC will be you correct me if I'm wrong, but if we do an addition, that the HVAC will serve that addition and may have extra capacity to do additional spaces at that time, but that doesn't preclude us from having, HVAC tends to be in separate units anyway to serve different areas. So I don't see that.
So in terms of designing phase one, we wouldn't have to know at that point which way a future expansion would go.
Yeah, and I think that we would say that it's either gonna go east or west, and it's gotta go a little this way so that we have an exit
Okay,
coming down here.
so it doesn't really matter for this discussion.
I don't see that, but and if it was gonna be larger than just the stairwell that gets us out of the third floor, the new third floor, then, that would be another unit, I would say, another development of mechanical systems for that. So, that serve that specific area. It's good because we have mechanical in the bomb shelter, as we like to call it, in the east basement. We have mechanical and then we have mechanical up
We have 3 mechanicals.
areas. Yeah. So it's not, and usually, in a building, it's not done all in one big area. It's especially in this case, because it's difficult.
So what I'm hearing though is that for phase one that we're discussing, we don't need to know for sure which way we're going. That's the answer. Okay. So the points I was gonna make, one is that we need to move forward making the assumption, we can't know, even if we came up with an elaborate plan for an expansion one way or the other, that it will ever happen. It's gonna be another legislature down the road. So we need to make sure whatever is designed is gonna be functional as the final product. Right? That's gonna be really key and really, really important. Beyond that, in terms of this committee making decisions about additional expansions, it feels like our hands are completely tied because we don't know about 2 and 4. We don't know if legislative council is gonna be vacating space. So we can't make any logical decision about whether that vacated space will be useful, how we would use it. That would be the first question. We have that space, what do we use it for? So how can we possibly make any reasonable recommendations until the decisions about where Ledge Council is going and how 2 and 4 Aiken are used? We can't, we don't have enough information.
Which came
We're
first, the
guessing.
chicken or the egg?
We're just guessing.
So
Allison?
I just want to clarify on the HVAC work. So I'm just asking that we make sure we include the discussion of 2 and 4. That's all, for how we're going, because you're right. You have to have that, figure out what you're doing with that before you do anything else. But I'm hearing from you that the HVAC system isn't going to be, for the existing building, isn't going to be fixed anytime soon. So we're going to definitely be in this configuration that we've proposed for at least 2 years.
But Joe, why don't you come on up and maybe help clarify
So that's
the timeframe?
we're telling everybody this is just going to be for a year, but the HVAC system isn't fixed until 23 or 4.
Joe?
Depends on your definition of fixed.
Yeah, right.
Joe Inja, BGS for the record.
Thank you for coming up on such short.
You're welcome.
So you heard the question. Is there a new timeline? What is the timeline?
The other day, we received a package from the mechanical engineers looking at all of the HVAC systems and a couple of proposals of what they could do going forward and a cost behind that. The cost was not broken out into phases or into what should be done, what must be done, and then what could be done to provide better, quieter airflow not blowing on people, stuff like that.
So I need that breakdown before we move any further in that aspect. But we're still looking at end of schematic design, moving forward with, once I get the pricing, with accepting what we're gonna do. And then having design development go through and actually lay that out, and we'll get another estimate. I forget the exact timeline that work's gonna be done. I want to say March, April, I think you're ready to make a decision. And then after that, we would be moving forward with construction documents. What I'm hearing on the street from other contractors is 4 to 6 months to get an air handling unit. So if we had everything in place on what we're gonna do with changing out these air handling units,
That's not the system though. What are you talking, the air handling units?
that's the big gray box that's got the fan in it running in all these.
Oh, the
rooms that we
committee
visited.
rooms. Yeah,
Yes.
that's not your mechanicals out here. That's what I wanted to be clear.
It's in that back room back here on the backside of room 11.
Yeah,
And there's some units in there hanging on the walls or on the floor and the ceiling. It's got the fan, got the filters, and goes to the ductwork. That is the air handling unit.
okay.
So it has heating and cooling coils in there, and that's what makes up an air handling unit. And with that being 4 to 6 months out, and that's at what I'm hearing today, not what could be happening in 6 months, there probably would not be time to start doing any type of demolition if I didn't have the unit already sitting here in place. So along those lines, we would not be doing anything until 2024. Now, that said, the unit down over here, as Tricia said, in the bomb shelter or something like that, that's a smaller unit. That may be something that's readily available. I don't know yet until we have a final design as to how that's going to work and how we're going to phase this project. So we're still working on that. I need to get the numbers back, broken out into phases, and what makes sense. A lot of those phases are also looking at the groups that are out there for those air handling units. So we have over here in the bomb shelter, that's one to do all at once. In the crow's nest, do all those at once. That's how that phasing would potentially go. There's-
I just want to clarify here because I lost a year. When you said 24, I was thinking 23. Mag design and pricing.
oh, sorry, I was off again.
Are you at 23 or
Yes,
20?
23.
Okay,
Sorry, thank you for catching that.
okay. So because you would have at the end of this March or April, at the end of this, basically the end of this coming session, you would have enough documents that have come back that we have a clear idea what the total cost of the project would be. And that would get incorporated in the capital budget. That would then allow you to go out for construction documents, to go out to bid over the summer of 22 and fall of 22.
Yes.
And then, because we're back in session in January of 23, construction can't really occur until we adjourn in the spring of 23.
That is correct. No.
Okay.
That's, again, I don't know what's out there for equipment. It was just this morning I heard on the air handlers being 4 to 6 months out.
When you say that the 4 to 6 months is when you place an order
Correct.
in terms of getting the equipment,
Yes,
not the construction,
that is correct.
just to
So
be
that's just
clear.
waiting for it to come.
It's,
So, but that's still all up in the air because that's what's happening right now today.
yeah, we don't know what will
In
happen.
6 months, the supply chain could get better. And it could go back to your traditional, 6 to 8 weeks to get a product. But I don't know that yet.
Mhm.
So, thank you. So it's clear to me, we are going to be in the current, whatever we end up with, what we've recommended, we will probably be in that way, in this way for at least 2 years in legislative session. and to Eric's suggestion, when they do the HVAC work, and we probably won't begin construction on the third floor until summer of 24 ideally. The summer of 23, we could do the same, as we do the HVAC system, we could be doing those committee rooms in the house. So that then, at least for session 24, before we begin construction on the third floor, we could at least reclaim some of our meeting rooms. And we could have at least those committee rooms finished along with the HVAC system. And so to Eric's point, that it would be great to liberate some of the communal space down here that we're going to be desperate to have after 2 years. It would be great to get work done on those committee rooms when we're doing the HVAC system so that we can do that.
Let me clarify. We made a recommendation on how to get us back into January here in this building with COVID still in the mix. Let's hope come January of 23, COVID is well behind us and we can get back into our regular committee rooms, period. Let's hope.
Even without an improved HVAC system.
Yes. Because we're doing what we're doing because of COVID. Let's not lose track of that. We're doing what we're doing with these rooms here in January because of COVID. We were very clear it was temporary. It was not permanent.
I don't think we can count on it being gone.
Yeah, I don't either.
Right, I mean, we just don't know. It's an unknown. It's an
But
unknown.
I wouldn't assume that it's gone.
Right, it won't be. That way.
Yeah.
I'm confused about when you're, Allison, you're talking about doing the committee rooms. What is that? You're talking about taking out the walls? and-
Yes, at least we could move 2 committees into those rooms so that we could reclaim some of our communal space down here, is what I'm thinking. Would we
The
get an
piece I'm
extra?
missing- The piece I'm missing though is if we did that, then there are 4 committee rooms that we currently have that are gone. And that locks us into using these existing, the common, meeting room spaces as committee rooms because there will be 4 that are gone, 5 that are gone.
So we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
I'm just trying to.
No, I
follow
was
what you're
tagging on to
saying.
Eric's idea, which I think is great, because if you can coordinate the HVAC work with doing some committee, yeah, you'd still gain 2 rooms and get people back into 2 rooms.
That's where you haven't gained anything. You've lost 5.
No, you haven't.
Been booked.
Do the work.
And just to add more layers to this, the HVAC project that we undertook, that we commenced, was to deal with mold and replacing old equipment. And in the time since that was budgeted for and put into the system, a lot of new needs and wants have begun to attach themselves to it because of COVID, because of conversations, because of potentially removing walls. So I think if there's any way we can, again, compartmentalizing work inside the State House so that we can rein in the scope of that project, we stand a better chance of getting it done.
Yes.
That we don't get into tearing down walls. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if, I'm saying we should consider what we expect to occur within the building while executing this HVAC project, and not necessarily tie all those decisions to whether or not the cafeteria is going to rise, because this ball is in the air and we don't.
So that goes to, you're not going to tear down those walls in the existing committee rooms until you know you're going forward with an expansion above the cafeteria. Those 2 are linked.
Right. But don't you think we'd know that by then?
That's what happens next session.
So I guess there would just be a separate mechanical project associated with that, and this project would proceed within its existing scope.
Right. Would be, I don't think. Butch?
I don't know.
Thanks. I'd like to circle back to where our conversation started. If we agree that phase 1 is the build up, build out of the cafeteria for the purpose of having a larger cafeteria and food service area and additional committee rooms, provisions for a possible future expansion. I think that's what I gleaned from your conversation, that's kind of a phase one thing. So we need to understand what, irregardless of everything, all the other conversations, which are great conversations, but we need to understand what Tricia needs to accomplish that goal for you to move forward with your RFI, RFP, whatever we're going to call it, in January, in March, actually now, February, March, if the money's appropriated. I think that's a question that we need to have answered before we get tangled up in tearing down committee room walls and all that. I mean, if we decided building out over the cafeteria to give us more committee rooms, I don't think we want to lose sight of, we need to find a larger room for Senate Ag or an additional committee, whatever committee it is, on a permanent basis, which could be part of this expansion. Construction notwithstanding, tearing down those walls, and the House committee rooms could be part of the build up. And it could all come together at once. So I think we're talking about something that, sure enough, the HVAC guys that are currently working now need to know what could be on the horizon. But I think we need to accomplish the goal of telling Tricia what she needs to put in the RFP. And we haven't done that yet.
Janet?
I guess the one thing I was confused about what you just said, I thought that building up also included, that project also included tearing down the committee walls so that those, so we would then be utilizing that additional committee space. I thought that was all.
That was.
That when you said tearing down the walls.
I think I might have just said that.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
part of that project.
Not part of the HVAC system.
Not part of the HE, but part of the overarching project that we're talking
Got it.
about.
Okay, I just want to be really clear, because that, to me, that's all
That's-
package.
That's.
Yes.
And I keep resisting calling it phase one, because I'd like to do that. And not get ourselves all tied in knots about 2 and 3 and every other phase.
And Jen, I agree, and we have time to talk about that later on.
Yep.
But we need to
Sure.
face I think we
with
need
you.
to face the immediate problem that we have before us now.
So I'm going back to Butch's question. Do you have enough information on what Butch and Janet, and I believe where the committee is as a whole, to go out with an RFP, providing you get the money? I mean, I don't see, do you have enough information?
So this is why I drew this up today, and so we can have a discussion on this committee rooms and existing versus. And I'm glad Joe's here for this too, to talk about square footage and needs. I think that's huge, in dividing, there's different categories, some, should be designed for 40 people in the room.
Are you talking for the space
For the-
where the cafeteria is now?
Yes. And then the other thing is on the RFP, I think it's key, that I would be able to have BGS, because ultimately it's got to go to BGS because it's a huge project, I would say. I could not stay in the Sergeant Barnes office, but for the addition, and the expansion to the State House. And if that's going to happen, then BGS has to be willing to review that RFP and possibly put it out, or if Janet puts it out, but with their blessing. I think that it needs to be a cooperative solution for that RFP to go out. So
But the question on that we had last time, because the money has not been appropriated,
is
can BGS even give their blessing to that RFP?
reviewing it.
Can they do that? If the administration is not on board with supporting a request in budget adjustment. Can they do that? That's the crux of the question. And I don't know if I can put BTS on the spot, but if the money is not appropriated to you guys, can you do that? Think about it, Janet.
I mean, I think we have some, it's up to us who it gets appropriated to. And I have to believe that we could figure something out where BGS has a role and we have a role. It may not look like anything else that's ever happened, but this is a unique circumstance. So it's not really it's a question of how do we do it, not can we? I think we can. We can.
But I agree with that, Janet, but the goal of getting the money out the door, what Trish has been talking about, is really actually going out with the RFP before the money is actually appropriated. Correct?
That's correct, based on the acceptance of the RFP, and moving forward would be if funded by the legislature.
Right.
But at that point, BTS cannot really look at it.
So the funding is available.
Well,
I'm,
then you won't do anything because we're never going to appropriate all that money until we know what we're appropriating it for. So it's a catch-22. And I guess the other question, Alice, we should be asking, because I heard you say that you thought the RFP should be more money, not the 1.5. So I think we need you to be clear about the amount of money we're talking about and what's adequate and what's in it. So I think those are the things we need to clarify.
and the amount of fees being charged for this project is dependent on how many square feet that we're going to be putting into how big of a building, an addition that we're doing, expansion we're doing. So that's where that's where I went back, Senator, and said, I was thinking this was going to be taking the estimates that we had of 12 million back in 2005 and for the addition over the cafeteria, very similar, that Feingold grew up in design development and estimated that number. I didn't quite double it. I said it was going to be 20 million. But now, after hearing the cost of a 16-foot linear wall at $20,000, just one wall, a door, and 2 outlets, I'm just like, I don't know what 20 million is going to cover with the addition onto this cafeteria in this time. It's just been so, and it's just an estimate. I mean, without having to have an estimator come in and give us an idea of what it would be, which we can do. That you can, I think that we could hire Tom Barton to estimate Feingold's plan for how much it would be to do the addition at this point in time and to renovate the 30s and 40s and expand funds. I think we have enough information to show them that and give us a schematic design estimate. And then we would know what kind of size project we're talking about in this day and age. But to that's why I can't give you, is it 1.5 million? Is it 2 million? Because
But we need to know because we need to make a specific ask at BAA for budget adjustment.
so I'm saying the 1.5 million I thought would bring us through part of design development, but I'm not sure about that now. So it should bring us through schematic design, and I say that operative word because, depends on how big the addition is. So it can bring us far into programming and start schematic design at least, or maybe make it through schematic design. And it depends on the estimate that we receive in programming and in schematic design from.
But do I hear you saying that 2 million would cover our bases?
But 2 million would cover part of the program and then possibly the schematic design in full. So, and that, again, I'm going to say back to you, it depends on how much the project costs. It's really based on 10% of the project cost. And if the projects are coming in at, more than double what we, or not double, but a lot more,
Right, but we won't know that until again, it's a catch 22. You're not gonna know that until you do this work.
It's just as long as you understand that 1.5 million will get us far into schematic design or into schematic design. Will it make it through schematic design at this point? Depends on the estimate, and they may be willing to do that, understanding that that is the amount that we've appropriated at this point, and that they will stop once that 1.5 million and wherever their design is at that point, and then you'll need to appropriate some more money. And that's the other thing, is that if you're going to continue with this schematic design, you really want to appropriate some more money in the capital bill for continuing with design development and construction documents.
So the question, I think we're just getting too much into the weeds here, okay? What we were hoping to do is jumpstart the project to at least get some money out the door quickly.
Right.
Start looking at program development and design documents, schematic design documents that will then give you a better idea of what that expansion will look like and what needs need to be addressed. We can't answer those questions today.
Right.
And we're not going to be able to answer those questions come January. That's why you need some upfront money, why we said, let's try 1.5 million in budget adjustment for the general fund. We've agreed to that, folks. Okay? If that goes through the regular process of the legislature with BAA, by March, hopefully, town meeting time, that money will be freed up, we hope, to be appropriated. That money will be appropriated. The question is, between now and then, do we have the authority for Tricia to go out for an RFP? I don't know if we have the authority to give her that authority to do that. The other piece to that was laid out, if Trish goes out for an RFP, can BGS kind of take a look at it and say, okay. But BGS is part of the administration. And the administration has voted no on this 1.5 million. That's the lay of the land. We can talk all we want. That's the lay of the land. So then the question becomes, do we really want to go for that 1.5 to jumpstart it, or let it go through the regular legislative process?
So Janet, I think we need to keep pushing. I support trying to get the 1.5, trying to figure out a path. The Appropriations Committee is starting in December on budget adjustment, although we've been talking about March or so for when it's finished. The House intends to act on it in January. So I think we'll have a pretty good sense about whether we've figured out the right way to appropriate it and the right relationship with the administration, whether they support it or not. Can they be a partner in helping us correctly do something they don't support, which I would hope they could, but I understand that it's probably not up to the folks in this room. So yeah, I think we keep trying to do it. And do we know absolutely it's going to work? No, but that's the way legislature works.
Right.
I think this group needs to come to a conclusion and begin to move some of these discussions in other places.
So last meeting, we had a motion that we would support the $1.5 million request. We're still there. If it goes up to 2 million, that will be in conversations through our appropriations committees. Okay? So that's behind us. That's going to be one of our recommendations. Of course, our recommendations will go to management, joint rule. The next question, should Trish go out for an RFP prior? Any discussion or approval in budget adjustment. You're saying no.
I'm saying no.
I mean, that's the crux here. Because if she goes out, she's on her own. Because I don't envision BGS being nice and looking at it, but I may be wrong. Would BGS take a glance at it and give a heads up or not?
I thought we
Yeah.
talked about that. I thought we discussed in collaboration with BGS for Trish. Wasn't that part of our conversation?
I thought I heard that too, that they would be willing to,
Collaborate?
yeah, and review the process, but it's a fair call.
But if their hands were going to be tied because of the separate branch of government, that's where
Then we went back to that.
Yeah, I think as the chair pointed out, the no vote in the prior meeting kind of put BGS on notice as well, that we need to be careful about how we proceed working with you guys.
I just want to ask a very basic question. I mean, how does the administration say no to this?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, everybody knows this is a problem that needs to be dealt with. You need to fix the State House. The administration's literally going to say no?
Seems inconceivable. It's the people's house. I mean, it's,
Joe?
I don't think we need to worry about that question. We are an advisory committee. All we are doing, we're not going to send Tricia out with marching orders. That's beyond our jurisdiction. All we're doing is recommending to the committees that have that authority a given path forward. So whatever decisions we make are going to be a recommendation. We don't have to sit here and worry about whether Trish is going to get that authority or whether BGS is going to be able to work with Trish and going forward. That's beyond our control, beyond our authority. We are just making a recommendation. And as a member of one of those other committees, I, for one, value what this committee's recommendation may be. So I'm anxious to be able to conclude this committee's work by issuing a recommendation. And we all hopefully are in consensus with what that should be.
So we could make a recommendation to the management committee in joint rules that Trish would be allowed to go out for an RFP prior to the money being appropriated and to consult with BGS. That could be our recommendation. And let other folks make that decision.
Okay, so you're kicking the can up the hill. Pardon?
We're punting.
Yeah, kicking the can up the hill on the money piece. I just have some fears, but that's out of our purview, but never mind.
What, the money? The one-
Yeah, what happens if is who's on the hook? The sergeant at arms on the hook for $1.5 million.
If we go out for an RFP prior to the money. being
Sign it,
appropriated.
yes.
Pardon?
If we sign it, yes.
Yeah, so I would, yeah, I mean, that's.
Can I, so when I first came in, the objective was to spend I can't remember what the funding is, before 2026
There's some ARPA
and
money.
have construction completed. So that funding, and I'm not sure how that works into, it still needs to be appropriated once it's divided up between the three branches.
You're not gonna know that until May.
Yeah, okay.
The stupidest move we should do.
I had it set up separate. I had it set up different when it left our body. We're not gonna know any of how those federal dollars will play out for an expansion until it goes through the legislative process. And we're not gonna know the final result. We'll have some ideas come February, March, April, and then that can all change within the last week of adjournment. I mean, we just don't know. So we put out our best guess. I come back, we do have an agreement around this committee about expanding above the cafeteria. and converting the cafeteria of current space to committee room and expanding some current committee rooms on the House side. And then, of course, we're going to try to deal with Senate Ag at some point. The question is, are we going to be able to jumpstart that or not? Our recommendation to Joint Management Committee and Joint Rules is yes, we want to jumpstart this project.
Yes.
And this is how we perceive the jumpstart. 1.5 million in BAA and some mechanism to allow the RFP to go out there quickly. That's our recommendation.
It's a good
It's
recommendation.
pretty broad.
And we're
That
sticking
would
with
be
it.
that would be our recommendation.
Great.
And we have Becky Wasserman with us, who is our draftsperson, that maybe can just put that down into language for our recommendation. We want to jumpstart this project. This is how we perceive the first phase of the project. We're requesting 1.5 million be in the general fund budget adjustment. And in the spirit of jumpstarting this project with a 1.5, we would ask for some mechanism to jumpstart the RFP going out. We don't know what that mechanism will be, but we're recommending a mechanism. Janet and then Eric.
Are you looking for language for a motion? Is that what Becky's doing?
I was thinking Becky was going to do it more for our recommendation, but we may need a.
But it would, I mean, the recommendation will be the motion adopted. So if we can get the language, I'm happy to move it.
Yeah.
To get a decision done.
Yeah. Becky.
Do you
I
want me
saw
to
her
email something?
That would be terrific, Becky.
Great.
If you can, thank you. Maybe we take a break and allow you to.
Oh,
do that.
that's a great idea.
Great. What a good.
Eric.
Eric, and then we'll take a break and we'll allow you to do that, Becky.
So Madam Chair, in your jumpstart, are you looking to issue the RFP before the?
It's not up for us to decide, that's for management committee and joint rules, because we cannot make a decision. We're saying.
We're recommending.
Jumpstart it,
And then they can interpret jumpstart as they see fit within their.
but there may be more conversations happening between.
I just
them.
wanted to-
So let's
yeah.
take a break, let's take a 15-minute break, 11:15, we'll go off with you.
We might be done by noon.
We'll allow time